What keeps us going when the scope of our game gets too big? This is a question that many of us have had to grapple with before, and it's obviously one of the themes for this episode that we talked about in this episode with AP Thompson, who's the developer of Titanium Court as his current project, but he's developed a lot of other games as well. So he's kindly agreed to be on the show, and we talked about Titanium Court and also, as usual, his entire path into game development. But before we get into the episode, time for a little announcement. I haven't done one of those in a while. As you know, this is episode 93, which means episode 100 is closer than ever. And it's going to hit at some point in August. I know the exact date. You can work it out if you look at the calendar, but I will not spoil it for you. But what I will spoil for you is that I'm planning a lot of very cool things for the celebration to the on the road to 100. So first of all, for you listeners of the podcast, I am trying to line up some very special guests for episodes 97, 98, and 99. I obviously also have something special planned for episode 100. It's going to be something that I've never done before on the show, so wish me luck. Hopefully it's going to go well. But the celebrations do not stop here on the podcast itself. There's going to be a video on YouTube that dives into a topic that I will announce later on. But if you've been following me on Discord, there is also the big star of the show, which is the Meaningful Games Jam 2026. It's the very first game jam I've ever hosted, and I've been wanting to do one for a while, for years now, and finally, the 100th Indie Diary gives me an excuse to do so. I have announced it on the Discord server. You can also find a link to it in the description of the of this episode, but do check it out. The whole premise behind the Meaningful Games Jam is to do a game that means something to you, to do a game that you deeply care about. There are a lot of very special criteria. There are a lot of very interesting low scale, but there are still some prizes and a very exciting collaboration with Indieverse coming up. But I will not steal any more time from the episode. Do check out the links in the description, and I'm sure we will talk about it further. But do follow me on social media or join the Discord server if you want to stay up to date with all of these developments. Let's get into Indie Diary number 93 now. Alright, hello everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diaries podcast. This is Ant, your loyal Indie Diarist as usual, and today with me is AP. I don't want to say too much about yourself, especially because there's not a lot about you that's available on the web that I could find. So I'll just hand it over to you. Just say a few things about yourself, what you do, where you're based, where your game is, and what you're working on right now.
All right, hi, my name is AP Thompson. I am an independent game developer based out of Brooklyn, New York. I just released a new video game less than 2 weeks ago. It's called Titanium Court. You can go to Steam right now and check it out and purchase it, and purchase 5 additional copies for any friends who might want to play it. I would recommend doing that. And I also released a game last year called Consume Me, which was a collaboration between me and Jenny Joushaw, who's a longtime collaborator of mine. And I think those are my 2 most prominent and also most recent projects. I got a lot of stuff going back over the years, but we don't necessarily need to get into all of that right now.
Yeah, of course. I've heard about Consume Me before, so that's tell me a little bit more about that game too, just so that we give the audience a little bit more context.
Yeah, so Consume Me is a semi-autobiographical game about my collaborator, Jenny Joushaw's life in high school when she was attempting to become hot. It's a game about her experiences dieting, her experiences doing makeup, trying to get a boyfriend, getting a boyfriend, trying to keep a boyfriend, trying to get into college, just being faced by a lot of pressures from her parents and her school and society at large. So that's what that game is all about. It's kind of a schedule management RPG mixed with WarioWare. So you kind of got like a mini game collection, and you've got like a strategic layer of time management, deciding what you're going to do with your time. So it's pretty fun. I would recommend you go to Steam and purchase that, and also purchase 5 additional copies for all of your friends.
Yeah, of course. I see a little pattern here. I'm starting to see a little pattern there. But yeah, no, that sounds super interesting, and also, I mean, it's such an important topic for that a lot of people actually struggle with, especially around those years and the teenage years, a time of discovery, so to speak. But before we get into anything else, and we're going to get into any further into the episode, as you know, we have a little bit of an icebreaker segment here where I'm going to ask you as many quickfire questions as possible within about 60 seconds, and then I want you to just answer with the very first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready for that?
Sure, yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Perfect. And there's going to be live music, by the way, just like a quiz show. So I'm going to start with the first question now. What is the first game you ever fell in love with?
That'd be Kirby's Block Ball for the original Game Boy. It was a breakout clone starring Kirby, but you got a lot of Kirby-style power-ups that make it a little bit more than just a breakout clone.
That's really interesting. Okay, if you could only play one game for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
Probably Magic the Gathering. Just because it supports playing it for your whole life if you wanted to.
Fair, makes sense. And if you could be a game character for a day, who would you be?
Oh, that one's interesting. You said, say the first thing that comes to mind, and I was like, I guess Yoshi.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yoshi can eat lots of fruit.
Yoshi's fine. I love Yoshi. Tell me an underrated game in your opinion.
An underrated game, in my opinion, Else Heart Break. This is a game that it's kind of like a point-and-click adventure game. I think it came out in 2016, maybe. It was kind of mid-2010s.
Okay.
And the idea is eventually you get a hacking device that lets you reprogram the world. So you basically get the ability to reprogram kind of what all the different items and objects in the game are actually doing. You actually program them with Lua. Was it Lua? I think it might have been. Maybe it was Basic. I can't remember what the scripting language was. Either way, very interesting game, very fun.
Okay.
It has a very, very slow opening where you do not have the hacking device. But then when you get the hacking device, it really opens up and it's awesome.
Interesting. Okay, I never heard of that one. I'm gonna have to look it up. But we are at time, actually. That's that I will indeed look it up after this. It's gonna be. It seems like something that I would absolutely enjoy. But now we can actually slow down. There's no need for doing quick fire questions for the rest of the episode. And as we slow down, I actually want to get to know a little bit more about your origins, because there's always that, that first part of our lives before we get into game development where we are exposed, or when we're exposed to to games for the first time. So what would you say is the first thing that you remember that has to do with video games, like your very first memory?
That would probably be seeing an Atari 2600 basketball game in the dentist's office. I think that's probably the absolute earliest, but I think that's maybe not the most significant early memory, but certainly the earliest.
Right? Yeah. No, that's. I didn't know dentist offices had games. Never had that in my life, so that is a new thing for me.
Yeah, in the waiting room, it's particularly if it's a dentist for kids, they will often have a game of some sort in there. Like when I was, do I have easy access to? Got it. I have a dentist's office, not a video game, but the kind of thing you would play in the dentist's office. Basically, it's a big ball full of a twisty little labyrinth inside, and there's a little marble in here. And the idea is you're able to try to get the marble through the big obstacle course. This thing is really, really fun. Classic dentist office sort of game. Yeah, but there were also dentist offices that have video games. Like one dentist I grew up with had a Donkey Kong arcade cabinet.
Okay. Well, wait. I'm seeing like the motive of the dentist coming up quite often. So you said this you grew up with, and you have a classic dentist office game. What's the connection there with the? If you want to talk about it, of course.
I don't know if there's a connection. I think the dentists just kind of have to I don't know. For kids in particular, in the waiting room, just give them something to occupy them, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
They might be waiting for a while.
I thought maybe you were a dentist, or maybe you knew some dentists, or maybe someone in your family was a dentist. But okay.
No, I'm not a dentist. No dentists in the family.
Okay,
no.
That's interesting. All right, that's really. But when did you realize you wanted to make the games? Actually, when was that? I always call it a watershed moment between when you were playing the games and when you started actually experimenting with them.
Yeah, so I mean, I learned to make games for the first time at a computer camp when I was very young. I don't remember exactly how old I was the first time I attended, but it was probably somewhere between 6 and 8 years old. So at that age, so I know this now because I then later went and was a counselor at the same camp once I was like older. But when the kids are that young, often you're not so much teaching them to make a game as you're kind of making a game and they're helping, right? Like
yeah,
that's sort of how that kind of plays out. But so yeah, I think the first time I went to that camp, I can't say I really learned how to make games, although I, made some games with the extensive aid of a counselor. But I continued going, and so after like the second or third time I was there, I felt like I had an actual handle on how games were made, and I convinced my mom to get me like the software program we were using to make the game so I could do it at home, and I was just kind of like doing that at home for a while.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And also, well, you convinced your mom, so I suppose your mom was supportive of that, which is not a given when it comes to video game development in general, game design. I've heard many people who were kind of, obviously it's a creative art, so parents will have their ideas on it. I certainly know that that to be true. But yeah, no, that sounds really, really, really good. And would you say, is there a game that you played maybe as a fan and you wish you'd made all this time?
A game that I had wish I had made. I feel like those I only started noticing games that I felt like I wish I had made that game once I had actually started seriously making games. It was like the kind of thing where games where I'm like, I wish I had come up with that and made it, is stuff like Baba Is You, which is like I had released games prior to Baba Is You coming out, so it's like similar thing. Like I think Balatro as well was like, man, it's so obvious now in hindsight, like how to make this type of game. But yeah, I think that's in both cases already a game developer by the time those are coming out. So I'm not sure there was a game that I wish I had made prior to actually making games. So yeah.
No, but no counts as well, I'd say, yeah. And you'd be surprised how many times Balatro comes up, especially because it's so simple, I would say. And maybe it is the thing, like those games that like you wish you'd made are usually that simple and that obvious once they're out in the open.
Yep. I mean, there are some examples out there of games where I not only wish I had made them, I tried to make them, and kind of ran into like scope issues or like couldn't really get the idea to work. Like, so Shadows of Doubt, like the procedural detective game, like I absolutely tried to make that concept work, like over 10 years ago, like probably back like while I was still in college. I tried to make a entirely text-based version of it, and it's a lot of work to get a procedural system like that to actually be interesting. So props to Shadows of Doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, in college, I mean, that seems like that sounds like that kind of system would probably take a little bit more experience than what you may have had in college. So no wonder. But also, yeah, you tried. I mean, that's the important thing. And I think you got to where you are now, especially because of those initial challenges. And speaking of challenges, actually, what would you say is a big development challenge that you overcome in your time being serious about making games, especially? So like something that you particularly remember as being very annoying.
Like I think one of the hardest things to overcome as a developer is like, it's really fun to build an initial system. It's really fun to like prototype something and then like kind of have a structure in place where it's like, oh, I could expand this into a larger game. And I think then a lot of people end up hitting this wall where the next thing that they have to do is, now that they've kind of got a core system, now they just have to go make the rest of the video game.
Yeah,
now they have to like fill in all the details. I've heard a lot of developers refer to this as, oh, now I just got to make content.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not a huge fan of the word content, personally. Like kind of, cheapens what we're actually doing here. Yeah. But I think it is a thing. There are a lot of games where it is a very different thing that you are doing when you're like kind of prototyping a framework or building the game jam version of a game to, now we're going to expand it, and expanding it means actually putting stuff in it. It means you need to like go do a bunch of writing or do a bunch of drawing or do a bunch of like design of like different ideas and stuff, right? And I think that that is a challenge to overcome, to figure out how to like actually do that part of development, because I think that the game jam part of development is sort of like easier to get into because there is a lot of like quick turnaround in terms of like, oh, it didn't take me very long and I made something and it's there, and like there didn't used to be anything there and now it's there, right? I think it's hard to go through the part of the process where you're doing a lot of work and not feeling like you're making any progress.
No, and it's what you're saying is a very, very fair point, and no one's ever brought it up before, like all these years doing this podcast, which is surprising, to be fair. But it is true. Like, it's something that I'm seeing myself. I haven't released a commercial game yet, but I've done a lot of like little jam games as I was learning to make games and learning the ropes of game design. But I do get that too already in those like small prototypes and such. Once you've built the system, it's kind of like the fun is gone a little bit, and you have to keep pushing yourself to want to add the extra stuff that you talk about. And I never conceptualized it that way before, but it's such a fair point. I wonder if clearly other developers will be struggling with it. I'm interested in asking more people about it and how they approach that. So what was your one solution to that?
Well, I think the solution that I got to with Titanium Cord, at least, is focus on just having a very consistent schedule for how I work on different pieces of it. So it's like I knew pretty early on the game was going to need a lot of writing. And the way I approached that was just to say I'm doing a little bit of writing every day. Like, I mean, this is like classic advice that writers give all the time. And I think it receives a lot of pushback sometimes because it doesn't work for everybody, right? It's like a lot of people are like, I tried it and that didn't function. But if you are anything like me, this might be the only way to go about it, right? Which is to just say, I'm going to do a little bit every day. In my case, it would be at least 20 minutes, sometimes 40 minutes, right? And you just spend that time writing. And at first, it's going to be hard because you don't know how to write the specific game you're writing yet, right? It's like maybe you know how to write, but you don't necessarily know how to write this game. Like, you don't know what the names of some of these characters are. You don't know, like, exactly how they're going to talk to each other or what their dynamic is. You have to figure some of that out. But as you do this for a really long time, like in the case of Titanium Cord, I was doing that, like, at least 20 minutes every single day for over 5 years. You eventually end up with a lot of quote-unquote content. So that's, like, a way to get through it. And also, you'll get so much more used to actually writing the game. It's like right now, like at the very tail end of Titanium Cord, it's very easy for me to write a scene for that game because I'm like, I know who all the characters are. I know exactly how they behave. I know what their deals are. So it's kind of automatic to write them at this point. But
and you have a system in place, of course. Personally, but being a writer, like that's what I do for my day job. Like, even I struggle with that advice, mostly because personally, my motivation in creative arts is to get something. It is the journey, obviously. It's for everybody. It's the journey. It's like the process of creating something, but it's also getting to, like, in milestones in a way. So in my head, sitting down to write for 20 minutes gets me nowhere, because I'm not even able to finish a chapter or maybe even a scene sometimes, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, like many other people out there. But I do see the value in that, and I'm seeing it in other things, like in game design. Like, even just doing about an hour of coding a day does get you far quite a bit. In my case, with writing especially, I find it hard to just switch on and then switch off, because once I'm in full focus mode, I'm in full focus mode for like 3 or 4 hours at a time. So that is my personal struggle, I would say. But yeah, no, the different things for different people, I suppose. That's what any listener hearing this advice.
Just for reference, I also cannot finish a whole chapter or scene in 20 minutes.
Okay.
No, it's like I'm getting fragments of chapters and scenes in 20 minutes. Yeah,
honestly, I don't know how you do it, man. Like, personally, I feel like if I have to only work on a fragment, to me, I haven't been productive enough. I have to finish at least something that feels somewhat complete. But it's me, obviously. So I do admire you for that. I think that is a skill that I have to learn by myself for sure. But yeah. Um, would you say there's in Titanium Court, obviously, I mean, you've been doing that for a long time and such, and obviously you've worked on a lot of features and whatnot. Would you say there is a feature or element in Titanium Court that you nearly gave up on but then didn't, and how did it pay off in the end, the choice?
Yeah, so there are a couple features in there. There's some history here where I spent the first year of working on that game kind of barking up the wrong tree in terms of the design of it, or the scope of it, basically, where the original plan was Titanium Court, the part where you're playing in Titanium Court, would only be chapter 1. And then there would be 4 chapters, and each chapter would be a different court. It would kind of be like, classic Warcraft thing of like, you've got the 4 different factions or whatever, and you're going to do a little mini campaign with each of them. And the idea behind it was that each of these chapters would have radically different mechanics going on. It would be like, oh, in one of these chapters, it's like your castle is getting up and walking around the map. Or like in another chapter, it's like you are like in the middle of a battle between 2 different armies and you're trying to get them to like not kill each other. And then there's like another one where it's like, oh, you're able to like do things in the middle of a battle, which you can't do in any of the other stuff, right? So very, very wildly different mechanical things going on. And the problem is like, these required some pretty hefty code changes in terms of like supporting all these different ideas. And fundamentally, I only got like 2 of these ideas to work and be interesting to play. So I think it was like after about a year of development, I had to rescope and say, actually, I'm going to replan this whole thing so it's just about Titanium Court, and there's a way for me to add variation here that's a lot easier, as long as I don't like mess with the kind of core fundamental interactions and mechanics. So I had done plenty of work on chapters 2, 3, and 4. But at that point, it's kind of like, I just got to throw this away. Like, chapters 3 and 4 in particular, not fun, not interesting, have not got these mechanics to work in a way that would be, like, good for a player to engage with, right?
Yeah.
Chapter 2, though, chapter 2 was still kind of functional. So even though, after, like, at the beginning of 2021, I was kind of like, I'm done with every chapter that's not chapter 1, eventually I was like, but I could probably do something with chapter 2. So let's find a way to sneak that into the game. So that was that basically the exact definition of it was abandoned, but then maybe not abandoned.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very cool story about the Titanium Court. It makes me wonder if you ever will try to go back to those chapters and make them work as their own standalone games, maybe like as some sort of like sequels to Titanium Court or something like that. But presumably you've played around with that with those so much that you already know that they're not going to work. So I don't know if that is the case.
There are versions of them that could absolutely work, I think. So it's definitely, it's not completely off the table that I would return to those ideas at some point. It would maybe be counter to the narrative spirit of what Titanium Court is trying to suggest. But I might be convinced to, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if they ever end up in any official capacity.
Well, if Nomura can retcon the entire Kingdom Hearts series in one game, you could probably do it too. So yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
What's and this is something that I always like to ask people. What's something in your game that you think most players would never notice, but you're quietly proud of anyway?
I think there's some very subtle jokes in there that I think are like kind of fun, and probably most players won't notice. There are a few kind of like things you can do in the game that almost no player is going to do that are really funny when they happen and they get triggered. And maybe this is a good opportunity to bring up so I've got like a list of little fun facts and stories that I kind of like wrote out before doing a ton of interviews, and the idea was each interview I'd present one of these fun facts or stories only to that interview. So you kind of get like a unique one. But maybe this is a good opportunity to bring up one of those, because I think that there's like kind of a funny thing that happens in the game that probably most players will not notice. Which is, so there's a character in the game. I don't know how much of the game you have played, or like how familiar you are with the characters who are in the game, but there's a character named Leland. And very, very early on, he goes to business school for a while. And then when he returns from business school, he has evolved into Business Leland, and that unlocks a new castle that's able to do like a bunch of trading and stuff like that, right? So he is away from the story for a while when he's at business school. It's not very long. Kind of the joke is that he comes back from business school very quickly. It doesn't take him very long. But it's still, due to the dynamic nature of the way the game's story works, you could like see plenty of story stuff like while he's away. And it's also the fact that like because him going to business school gets triggered by you earning like a certain high score, it's very possible for that to not happen for a while, for that to happen all over in the story, right? So I kind of have this like narrative problem of like, what do I do about story sections where Leland shows up? What do I do when he's away at business school? Because I kind of don't want to block those scenes from happening, or at least I didn't. So my solution to this was to basically let those scenes proceed, but whenever he's supposed to show up, I just have a different character portrait pop out instead to like say his line of dialogue, but it's not him, right? Because so this is like, I can take advantage of the fact that nobody's name is included in the UI anywhere. It just shows you the portraits. So there's like a lady who shows up instead of him when he's gone. And so you can rarely see her secretly. Her name is Leela because she's like standing in for Leland. So you can encounter rare Leela sightings, and I think that's like kind of fun.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely something that would take players quite a few playthroughs to actually notice. That's nice, very nice solution there. Okay.
I mean, most players won't even see it because you won't even necessarily see a scene where he's supposed to show up while he's away. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's but the level of detail and the level of commitment, not commitment, but at least the level of effort and care for detail that you put into that is definitely something that players will notice instead, because presumably is the same thing, that it's the same philosophy that guided the entire development, which is something that is always resonates with players quite a bit. So we're almost near the end now. There's some more reflective questions, but before we get to that, there's a bit of a break that I like to do by doing a little bit of a playful exercise. So I think actually Titanium Court lends itself really well to this question. So imagine this. If you were to recreate Titanium Court with only physical toys, and I think with you having like dentist office toys, you would have a pretty clear answer to that. How would you do that? And I'm thinking like it could be a board game, could be a toy like the one that's just behind you right now. How would you approach that?
It'd be a puppet show. You'd have puppets, and the puppets would be kind of like presenting you, like it would be like an immersive puppet show where we've got like a little stage with the puppets, and they're presenting the narrative, and then they kind of like present you with the game, and there's like these little like board game style puzzles that you would play, and the puppets would guide you through them. I think that's probably how it would happen.
Nice. Yeah, I think that sounds so fun. To be honest, I think it would be a great one to play with friends and such. So in real life as well. So yeah, great. Well then, listen, AP. I love asking these questions to everybody because I feel like it drills down to the core of why we as people who make games do what we do. So why are you a game developer? What drives you forward? What's that thing that led you from that game, that basketball game in the dentist's office, to where you are today? What's the red thread?
Yeah, I would say that. So maybe this is not the best answer to give, but if I were not a game developer, I would probably be doing something else, like creatively, right? I think that.
Okay.
I really like telling stories, and I really like kind of making things to entertain people, for them to kind of explore, to illuminate stuff, right? I really like making art one way or the other. So when I was like when I was growing up, I did a lot of stuff. Like, I wrote a lot of poems. I did a lot of prose writing as well. Made attempts at making comics, although my illustration skills were very sorely lacking at that point in time. So comics didn't last very long in terms of that, right? But looking at doing music as well, I think that in general, I really, really like the creative process, and I like storytelling and all the different ways that it can be done. And I guess why I ended up in games specifically is that on top of all of that, I also really like solving little technical puzzles and find that very fun. And it turns out that the best way to combine that with creative output is to make a game, I think.
I think. Well, I mean, you weren't giving yourself enough credit for this answer, because I think it's a good one, and it's actually an answer that I hear quite a lot on the show. It's just the games make sense for me. Like, games bring together a lot of disciplines that I love, a lot of things that I love, and I feel like in your case, you said if I weren't making games, I would be doing something else creatively. There are some people who say, if I didn't make games, I'd be doing absolutely nothing else. I mean, I don't feel like it would be. I feel like game development is where my soul is at, where my heart is, and I think that that is always very touching to hear. And if that kid that played, I assume you played it, the basketball game in the dentist's office, could see you now.
I was too young to play it. I think I just observed it.
All right, okay, and so you just observed it from a distance. All right, and if they could see you now, what would they think? If they could meet you now and hear all these stories, what would they think?
I don't know if they would necessarily be able to process it, because as I said, they're a little too young to really know what's going on. I think maybe if I were a little bit older, like for instance, if I had already played Final Fantasy VII or something, then I would be very excited about, like, oh, you get to just write a fun story and have it be a video game. Like, who lets you do that? That rules,
Yeah, no, that makes a little sense, and I feel the same sometimes. I'm like, if that little kid that was playing games with his uncle, which is me, could see me now, that the kind of stuff that I do now, I'd probably be able to share quite a lot with him. And but I don't know if he would definitely understand. Just as you say, maybe even then I was too small to understand all of this. All of this incredible stuff that is game design that wasn't even, I mean, it was already quite a developed discipline, but maybe not as developed as it is today. Game design keeps evolving quite quickly, especially now with all the indie new waves and such. And back to Titanium Cord, what do you hope that someone feels in the first, say, 5 minutes of playing it? What's your vision for it?
I think in the first 5 minutes, they should probably feel a little bit like, I don't know what's going on yet, because the game is not revealed.
Okay, yeah.
It's full form by then. They should feel intrigued in the first 5 minutes. Like, they want to see where it's going.
Okay. I think it makes sense, and if it does happen, it would show that you basically did everything right, because holding attention these days is a nightmare. But thank you, AP. This was such a lovely chat, and lovely to spend a quick half an hour together. This episode just flew, honestly. As some time for some parting words, I would say, where can other people find you? And if they do, what is the best way to support you?
So you can find me on a variety of social media sites. Like, I think Blue Sky is probably, I don't know, where I'll be posting announcements, although probably I'm not going to be posting anything other than announcements, because that's not really how I use it. But you can find me, AP Thompson, so APTHOMSON .bsky.social. That's the official handle. And the best way to support me is to go ahead and buy Titanium Court along with 5 copies for all your friends. And then also go purchase Consume Me and 5 copies for all your friends. I think that's the best way to do it.
I knew you'd bring up the 5 copies. Yeah, that's great. All right, well, thank you, AP. And obviously, I will have all of these links in the description of the episode so people can find you very easily and support you and buy those 12 copies in total for themselves and their friends. But thank you very much for coming to the show. It was a pleasure having you on, and wishing you all the best with Titanium Court, and obviously anything that might come after.
Great, thank you.
All right, my friends, thank you so much for listening. Sorry for the slightly nasal voice. I just sneezed. I think I'm coming up with a cold. But thank you very much to AP for wanting to be on the show. It was a lovely episode talking about all things, especially dentists. I don't know why they came up so much, but here we are. Please, listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, do make sure to support AP by buying at least those 12 copies that are absolutely necessary for you to enjoy his games and for your friends to also enjoy his games. So please check out the links in the description and make sure to show him some support. Now, obviously, you can support the show in a lot of different ways. You can go on patreon.com/indiediaries, where my tier starts at just £2.25 per month. And with that, you get access to episodes in advance, but also long-form videos in advance. The latest video in the Indie Chronicles series is about Fumito Ueda and is out now on YouTube. You can listen to it on YouTube, you can enjoy it, you can leave me some feedback, and we can discuss it in the Discord or on YouTube itself. I hope you guys enjoy that. Obviously, you can follow me on social media and everything else, and make sure, as I mentioned at the beginning, to check out the Meaningful Games Jam. Joining the Discord is going to be pretty important for that one because we'll discuss the theme there. You can team up on the Discord. We are going to have a shit ton of fun. So please make sure to give it a look. But other than that, I will speak to you in the next episode of the Indie Diarist podcast.